It is my pleasure to welcome Bethany Moffett here today to talk to us about her approach on giving. Bethany has recently started her own company. She is a sales coach for businesses, and I can attest to the fact that she knows a lot about motivation, growth, how to grow a successful business, how to grow a successful sales team. And it's just my pleasure to welcome you here today, Bethany. Thank you so much for taking the time.
Oh, it's my absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. Happy to be here today.
So Bethany, we met and we very, very quickly connected. And then you connected me in almost instantaneously to some of the most amazing women I've ever met in the field of market research. I know that you have that background. And, one of the things I love most about you is your ability to genuinely and authentically connect with people. It really drew me to you. And I knew I wanted to have this conversation with you for a number of different reasons. But I wanted to start by asking you, what are some of the causes that you are passionate about or maybe have been passionate about for a long time?
Yes, well, thank you. There's a lot of different organizations over the years that I've been passionate about, and two that are really important and near and dear to me in my heart right now is one, the Worldwide Wildlife Federation. I love the work that the World Wildlife is doing. The conservation efforts that they're doing. I had an amazing opportunity to spend some time in the amazing nature in Uganda and Rwanda, and I can't even tell you the feeling that I felt just seeing the raw nature and beauty of almost like untouched from human and technology and innovation, and just the amazing natural beauty of those two countries on that continent. I've always just had a huge love for the natures, the outdoors, and animals and conservation, and the work that they're doing there is just fantastic. I've really spent a lot of time and energy with that organization. Another organization that I've given a lot to over the years is the Susan Komen Breast Cancer Research. And while things have gone back and forth with my love-hate for that organization, specifically the work that they are doing and the research that they've done to overcome and find cures for cancer has been absolutely fantastic. There's been a lot of money that they've given. And in fact, my sister just overcame breast cancer, and the type of cancer that she had 5 years ago would have almost been a death sentence. But with the research and the amount of money and dedication from a lot of time and great people and money, obviously, that have been given to that organization, it's now one of the most treatable forms of breast cancer. And so, I certainly give to a lot of the different cancer organizations, because unfortunately that is something that many of us may or may not have to deal with either personally on our own or certainly one of our loved ones. So those are two organizations that I care a lot about, or just two areas of life that I care a lot about: nature, animals, conservation, as well as cancer research and overcoming that, since it affects so many of our lives. And then, of course, I love your organization as well. When I was introduced to your organization, the work that you're doing, obviously giving back, helping people is obviously huge. I do that, a lot through, the connections that I make in my professional world as well. But I was just been so impressed with the work that you've been doing there. You're just so motivated, and you're making such a big impact. I've been impressed with you from the moment that I met you, my friend.
Oh my gosh. Well, thank you. And, I love your stories about Africa. I think, having also traveled to that continent and getting to experience a little taste of the countryside and nature and the wonderful flora and fauna and wildlife, it's absolutely unbelievable. And yes, we need to do everything that we can to protect our planet and the wonderful animals. And yes, I think cancer is also a cause that, has pretty much affected every single person that I know, every single person that is in my circle. When I worked in advertising at the Richards Group in Dallas, I was fortunate enough to have two clients. One was MD Anderson Cancer Center, and one was a Children's Medical Center. And we worked a lot on trying to build the profile and funding of cancer research. So I definitely agree. That's very, very it's a very noble thing to do. And it's not something where you invest your time. You might see the difference in your lifetime necessarily, but it's definitely needed.
It's a long journey, and unfortunately, with a lot of the environmental things we've got going on, it's not going to be going away anytime soon, unfortunately. So it is one of those things. I agree. Like our world and our earth is extremely important to us. And I didn't mention this. Another one is that I give to pretty regularly. I'm not as involved, but the Alzheimer's Association is a big one that's in my bloodline. I saw my grandfather, my papa, suffer through that, and importantly, my mom, caring for her through that. So, the work that they do not only with sufferers, but with caregivers as well, I really applaud and appreciate the work that they do there.
That's amazing. And, Bethany, it's interesting, you've started your own business now, and it has the word thrive in it.
Yes.
And actually, when I think about that word, we often, when we think about children in need and vulnerable children and children who are malnourished, we talk about not just surviving, but thriving. And I'd love to hear a little bit about why, the company that you've started and why you picked that word specifically.
Yeah, no, thrive. I mean, to your point, I mean, it's one thing to just survive. And I feel like, I'm coming out on this, I said in the after times, I've got to put 4 times in the after times of this defining moment of the pandemic. In the after times, I feel like a lot of us were just in like survival mode. Like we were just trying to get our footing in this new world of this mixing of work in our personal lives in a way that we'd never seen it done before, with all of us living in our homes. And a lot of businesses were suffering, and business owners and consultants and employees alike were all just really suffering. And I was working with some business owners, and they really were like, I need to just get out of survival mode. And I was like, yeah, you need to get into the thrive mode. And through those conversations, that was really the spark for motivating me going into business, that there's a big gap and a need that my expertise and network could help fill. But really it is to help of that evolution from just surviving, but getting into your thrive moment, to where you're really hitting on all cylinders and able to evolve from just like keeping your head underwater, but really able to strategize and thrive in your business, and being able to lay a foundation that will catapult you into whatever is next.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And when I think about you, and because you're such a connector, I'm curious to know, were you passionate about these causes, or, when you were a little kid, how did you learn about giving? How did you learn about connecting?
Well, it's interesting. I've been in, without even really knowing it, I've been in the, I really call it more of like the problem solving field. And that's what I like to do. I like to solve problems, and a lot of problems can be solved through connecting people that have problems with people that have solutions. And so that's really what even when I was selling Girl Scout cookies, I saw that as a way to bring joy, solving the problem of sadness and bringing joy through cookies. And through that, I've, went into corporate event planning, and, of course I worked in restaurants, and I got into corporate event planning, hospitality. And it's always about creating experiences for people and solving problems for them in the moment. And it's just continued to grow. I'm also on the side building another business, and more in the experiential space. But I just love that, making connections, solving problems, and creating great, memorable experiences. And I don't know exactly where that started. I think it's really just based on seeing the results on people's faces brings me lots of joy as well. I get a lot of fulfillment. I'm bringing joy to other people, making connections and solving problems. And I don't know exactly where that came from, to be perfectly frank, other than the fact that I've just kind of been doing it my whole life. I was the oldest of 3, and so I was the one that was solving a lot of problems. I was a latchkey kid, growing up, a Gen Xer. I was watching my 2 younger sisters at 12, that wasn't rare at the time. That was pretty normal, so nobody freaked out. But yeah, I was kind of always a problem solver and a connector, and I love doing that in my professional career. I've always been like, oh, I met this person over here that was just talking about trying to, do XYZ that, I'm having a conversation with and making that connection, which is, something that you and I did when we first connected as well, and it just brings me a lot of joy. So
that's amazing. And I can see you light up. And, we talk a lot when we think about giving and service and volunteering and just taking the time, because it does take time to make connections. You sort of have to go out of your way. But that is part of how I view you. You have such a big heart and you just really freely give of yourself, and you take the time to say, hey, I'd like to connect you to this person, or how have you thought about this? And so I really, I've experienced it through knowing you. But for those people out there who don't know you, it's something that is just a pleasure to witness, and it's amazing how you make connections. You are so dynamic, and it's just incredible, and it's definitely of service to the world, because the connections that you've made have enabled more people to help baaldan, have enabled more people to have awareness about these different causes and different things because of your passion and just kind of your sincerity. And this brings me to kind of my next question for you, which is, I'd love for you to think about, young people today. So we talked about, being in Gen X and whatever, but think about maybe those young people that are about to graduate from college, young women, what advice would you give them as they think about not just giving and philanthropy, but just sort of how to go about making sense of this world? Because there are also a lot more choices out there now. There's a lot more stuff going on. So what advice would you give to someone?
It's a great question, and I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that another big organization that I've given to a big time in my professional career, not so much in my personal life. Obviously, those things cross over. But the Insights Association, I've been serving on the board of the Insights Association for the South Central chapter for, I think I'm going on my 8th year. I don't even know anymore. I just feel like I'm kind of like a permanent fixture now. I really cannot even begin to talk about the magnitude of the impact that organization has made in the industry and myself personally. I strongly encourage anyone that's getting into the space to get involved with an organization that you align with, that can help you make connections, help you support your learning and your growing as you navigate through your career. And don't just attend, but actually get involved, participate, volunteer your time, raise your hand and get involved. There's lots of ways that you can very easily get involved. Attend the events first, but before you go, reach out to the organizers and say, hey, how can I help? It can be easily as just being the greeter, checking for name tags at the beginning. But by stepping up to the plate and raising your hand, it can go a long way for getting just access to resources, to mentorship, to information, to education, to experience of people that have been in your shoes before, potentially, that could help you along the way. So anyone getting into the space, into any space, frankly, whether it's research, insights, or any space, just lean in. I know that that's a little, cliche at this point, but it still stands. Like, really just find something that interests you in your space, and then raise your hand and get involved. Step up. I promise you'll get back more tenfold than what you give.
That's wonderful, wonderful advice. And I remember when I was at university, one of my professors had said, more so than the degree that you'll get when you leave this university, the number one skill that you need is to network.
Absolutely.
And joining an organization, joining a board, joining an advisory board is a wonderful way to connect. When people ask me, Tanya, I want to start my own charity. You started baaldan. What should I do? The first thing I say is, please don't do what I did. Join the board of another charity, help them, learn what you need to learn. There are so many wonderful organizations out there. You don't need to recreate the wheel. Had I had to do things over, maybe I wouldn't have taken the path that I took with baaldan myself. But even with baaldan, I didn't go and build Tanya School. I went and leveraged and invested in an already existing small grassroots organization to build a school, to invest in orphanages that already existed, to kind of help support them and join, their advisors, councils, and that type of thing, just because I feel the same way. I get so much more out of it than even what I contribute. So I definitely think that's great advice. And then lastly, I just wanted to ask you, when you think about yourself and what's inspiring you right now, what's motivating you right now? Is there anything in particular you're reading or doing or observing that is just making you happy and lighting you up and giving you joy and inspiring you?
Well, that's a good question, and it's evolving right now. I mentioned I'm doing these two businesses. One I'm not quite ready to announce yet. There's a lot of work going involved in that, but I will tell you that when I Venn diagrammed my life out, that I found this thing that I'm like, okay, if I could make this a business work, it would bring me so much joy. So, really, in the after times, I will say that, there was this period when everything just kind of slowed down, and it gave most of us, whether we wanted to or not, this opportunity to just kind of like, okay, it got real quiet. Let's just put it that way, and everyone had the opportunity to assess, or many of us. Some of us not so much, because it was just straight survival mode, and that they weren't even, but some of those uncomfortable and trying times, a lot of us reassessed. I'm committed even more to giving back and wanting to understand what my next 20 years are going to look like, and how I can bring all of the things that I've had the privilege and opportunity to do in my career so far. How can I bring that to bear in a more meaningful way to the marketplace and myself? Specifically, I will say, generally speaking, I'm uberly excited about, I don't know if that's a word, but what artificial intelligence is bringing. I think that's I've just been really excited about learning all I can about that. I've been down tons and tons of wormholes around it, but it's been a huge tool for me to add into my tool belt, especially being a person primarily sitting at home solo, working on my own. I've been using these AI tools as a great coworker to bounce ideas off of, and it's just been fun playing with it. So I've been having a really good time. I'm really eager and interested in to just see how we continue adopting it and bringing it into our day-to-day life, and how it can help us even advance what we're able to accomplish on a day-to-day basis. But there's also this other thing of just like, I don't want so much of my identity has been around my work up to this point, that I really am focusing on spending a lot of time on getting a better balance around my time and energy, where it's spent to where what I'm doing on a day-to-day basis, that I'm creating an environment where it doesn't feel as much like work.
That's amazing. And I think many, many people out there will relate to what you have gone through, are going through, are thinking through, and even all the AI stuff. I think many people out there will relate. And I just want to thank you, Bethany. Thank you for all the connections you've helped make in my life and for baaldan, and for anyone out there listening to this that needs coaching, that wants to grow, that wants to connect, please find Bethany, find her on LinkedIn. She's an amazing, amazing person, a strong woman entrepreneur. And I also agree the Insights Association is a great organization too. But thank you. Thank you so much for doing what you do. And most of all, thank you for your big, big heart. It's just a joy to know you. And thank you for your time and helping us all tap into more of what we need to be doing, which is giving and connecting with each other.
Absolutely, my pleasure. And thank you for all the work that you're doing. It's always a pleasure connecting with you. It's my absolute pleasure anytime, my friend. Have a wonderful rest of your day.
You too. Thank you.